Today we're going to look at adding characters using Power Query. Adding characters is important because data doesn't always come from clients in a format or view that we can use. Sometimes you've got a variable and it needs a specific number of characters so that you can combine it with another data set. And to do that, you need to be able to add characters to make them both the same length. Without having this uniform length, you can run into sorting, searching issues, or you can have some issues with the pivot table combining, the data correctly. Without cleaning the variable, you can arrive at incorrect results and make poor decisions based on it. And then sometimes you just need a specific number or word text in front of or after a variable. And you need to do it for the whole column of variables. And so that's why adding characters is important. So we're going to start out with the data that we get from the customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to Excel. Okay, so this is the way the data came into us from the client. We're going to move it into Power Query, and it comes in and comes in exactly the way you see it. And then we're going to do a few transformations to it. At this point in time, we have the vendor number in its column by itself. We have done a couple of steps. These steps are actually, they are the steps that you take in Power Query. So these steps are usually just clicks and selections. So they really are not hard to do. What we're going to be doing for adding characters, we're actually going to be using M code. What we know about this vendor number is that it should be 6 characters long. But as you can see, not all of these are 6 characters long. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a character, and we're going to make it so that they're all 6 characters long, even though in Excel you would have to identify which are 4, which are 3, which are 2, all that type of stuff. We're going to do it in one custom column. So as I said, so these steps up until now have been where you click on a button and make a selection. It gives us a box that we fill in for these steps. When we get down to this vendor where we're going to add the character, we're actually going to be using M code. M code is Power Query's method for filter, combine, and mash up data from one or more supported data sources. That's from Microsoft. So while it's not a click and selection, it's not hard. And it does give you some help. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a custom column, and the custom column, and we're going to insert it here. And the custom column will actually give us some help here. So what it's going to do is we're going to actually give it a new column name. So it's going to be vendor number. You cannot use more than the column name more than once. So as in Excel where you can and then you have problems later, Power Query will actually name it another name. It'll say .1 or .2 or whatever. So you can never name a column the same name in Power Query, which is nice. It actually gives you the available columns to use in your formula. It gives you a link to learn about Power Query formulas if you have a question about them. And then it also tells you if there is any sync errors or syntax errors. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here. What we've got here is the equal sign. It starts you out because we're putting in a custom formula. So it's going to start you out with the equal sign. You don't have to put that in. What you are going to have to put in is a few M code wording that is always going to be the same for certain things. So with this one, we're going to actually be using this TextPad start. And TextPad start actually will tell you we're padding the number. We're padding this variable. It does have to be in a text to be able to pad it, because with a number, if you put zeros in front of it, it won't see it. So it has to be a text. You can only do a text, obviously a TextPad start, because it says text. So what you're going to do is for this vendor number, we want zeros in front to make it up to 6 digits. The custom column gives you the equal sign to start, and we're going to type in text pad start. Now, as you go back, see as you type it in, these things will come up, but if they don't come up in the options of your Excel, you're going to be able to see there's an intelligence where this actually comes up. So you will want to have that put on. So you've got a pad end and you've got a pad start. So what it is we want to do it in the start. If we wanted zeros at the end, we would say pad end, but we want pad start. It is case sensitive, so you do need to. You can also click it and it will come in there. See, that gave me the two texts, but you can click on it to get it. And then as you do this, see how it gives you, if you hover over it, it will give you actually the how you're supposed to read this. Okay, so it tells you this is the equation. So you're going to do text pad start. You're going to have the text. So you're going to say what text you want. And then you're going to have the count as numbers. So you want to know how many numbers you want. And then you want what character do you want to use in there. So this is what we're going to do. So we're going to put in a parentheses, because when you put in a formula, you start out with the regular Excel or whatever formula part that you want. Ours is text pad start. We want actually to click on vendor number 1. And then we are going to type in, oops, forgot that something. Before we do that, we want to say, what is it from time, I get that out of there. What is it we want from vendor 1? We want text from. And again, this is M code syntax. But once you see this, and once you've done it, and once you have this in your files, you can always come back and look at it and say, okay, this is how I do it. It's always going to be very, very similar, very much the same. It's always going to be text pad start, text pad end. It's going to be text from. Then you are going to select the vendor number, vendor.1, and then it's going to be end parentheses. There will be a comma. And again, as you go through here, if you hover over this, see how it tells you there's a comma after the nullable text, count as number, comma, character. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say, I want this to be 6 digits. Then I want another comma. And then I want to put in, what is the character that I want to put in there to make up those 6 digits? If it doesn't have 6 digits, what do I want to put in there? And because this is a text, we need to put quotation marks around anything we type. So even though 0 is a number, in this case, it's a text. And then we put an end parentheses. It is telling me there's an error, so I hit show error. Oops, that's okay. I can see where the error is. The parentheses has to be on the outside. All right, so it's telling me I still got an error. Okay, show error. It's telling me that I have something wrong here. So what I want to do is I want to look at this, and I'm going to put in the parentheses in front of the vendor. Now you can see that no syntax errors have been detected, and you can hit OK. So again, I'm going to erase this and start over. We're going to say text dot pad start. Again, this is case sensitive. We put a parentheses. We go text dot from. We put another parentheses because we have to pick up the column. We end parentheses. We have a comma. 6 for the number of characters that we want to use, comma, quotation mark 0, quotation mark, and end parentheses. So that is our formula. I did show you where there were, if you have a mistake, you need to read it and make sure it's in there correctly. You need to have a parentheses around after the text pad start and after the text dot from. And down here it says no syntax errors have been detected. So if you look at this vendor 1 and you hit OK, actually your new column comes out to the far right. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this. You can click it and drag it. We're just going to move it over to the next to, and then insert that, next to the vendor 1 and vendor 2. Okay, so vendor 2 is actually the vendor name. This is going to be the vendor number. And see how these all line up? And they're all like that. That's perfect. This way you can use this for sorting, for whatever, because it's going to be in the right order. If you sorted the other way, it just doesn't work out. If I sort by this file, you get some of these numbers But see how you've got the 251? It shouldn't be down here. It should be farther up. So you would actually have, this should actually be at the top. Whereas if you sort here in ascending order, you're going to get it at the top. See how you get the 251? So that's why you need to have the zeros in front of it. So when you're sorting, it does make more sense. And then there were some additional steps that we did. And again, they were all click and select. So now we've got our data. We go home, close and load it to. And you look at, this is the data that we got originally. And this is the data that we've got now. And you can see it's so much easier to use. There's a few other things that you can do if you needed to. But at this point, we've got our vendor number, we've got our vendor name, and that was by adding characters. So by adding a couple more transformations, we get to our final data, and that shows you how to add characters. Now, this is how we do it in Power Query. If you looked back and tried to do it in Excel, it would take quite a bit longer. It was actually only one custom column with one formula. If you did it in Excel, you'd be doing a lot of manual work, or you'd have to create a macro, and the macro would only work on the current spreadsheet. This one, if you brought the same data in every month or whatever, you could run it through the same query and it would come up with the same data for you. So, all right, so hopefully that helped. This is where we end up by using the Power Query M code. We can easily set up any length variable. We could, if we had to add a word to the end of it, we can do that also. It's just, you would put it pad end. So hopefully that helps you. And if you've got any questions, just let us know.